Welcome to the Mucked Up My Self-Care podcast.
I'm Jill from New York.
And I'm Linda from Tasmania.
We are two moms from opposite sides of the world who are living, demonstrating, and helping moms across the world build their self-care asset bank.
Ready to dive in? Messy, interrupted, imperfect, and most of all mucked up. Let's get going.
Good morning. Good evening.
Good morning, evening. You're starting to get lighter earlier in the day.
Yes. We've also changed our time of getting together. So
I know, that's true. We've had to adjust and readapt because we are, relying on very different time zones.
It's on its way to summer. It's exciting.
Yes. Yep. And we're starting to green up in the yard and get some gardening done finally.
Good.
As well. So let's start, as we always do, with some highs and lows.
Great. Are you ready with some to share? Do you want me to go first?
You go first this time.
Okay. Let's see.
First,
my low is that I am feeling a lot of chaos in my mind, in my plans, in everything. It's just like there's no plan at all. It just feels like total chaos. My high is that we had just a lot of fun this past weekend with all the things that we were doing. Declan was away at grandparents for the weekend because we had events going on. So it was a really nice, productive Saturday with nobody at the house but me, so I could relax and do some chores. A double duty, just hanging out. And then we got some socializing in. I hung out with some friends and then built a fire to enjoy the nice spring evening. So there's just a lot of good stuff around this weekend, other than the chaos going through my mind, keeping me awake at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
How about for you, Linda? Highs and lows?
Yeah, I'm so sorry about the chaos because I can relate to the chaos. So I feel like that's also one of my lows at the moment. It can feel really alone inside your head at times, while also feeling very noisy as well. So for me, I think I've got a couple of big things coming up and I'm feeling underprepared and like there's a lot to tick off a list. And then I'm thinking, why am I creating lists in my head at nighttime? And yeah, there's a lot in this season, let's call it. There's a lot coming up for both of us. There's a lot of things we're trying to wrap up as well. So I'm finding that sometimes quite tricky. We're also just at the beginning of 2 weeks school holidays for us as well. So all of the children are home trying to navigate some of the sibling stuff that goes on, just with general sibling stuff going on. Somebody wants a computer or all sorts of things happening. So yeah, that's feeling a bit like the chaos in my head as well. So you are not alone in that. And I think for my high, it would be the deadlines, I think, are helping me up level my focus. So helping me in a way get quite concentrated on some things that I'd like to finish off and on the way tracking along, which is helpful, but also need to know that I can't do everything on my own either, because there is still dishes and housework and dust in the corners of everything, it seems, at times. So, yeah.
I feel like I work better with deadlines. It's like, give me something to be accountable to instead of letting me just willy-nilly work on it. So
Yes, I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
Like the end of the quarter, you tend to ramp up all the things you want to finish by the end of the quarter.
Yeah.
Yep, indeed. Each time. Anyway, so what are we talking about today?
Ooh, so we've got. Well, this was our working title, but self-care doesn't always have to be long or alone. And I think this is probably one of the bigger lessons that I've learned over this past year and journey of figuring out what self-care is to me is that it doesn't have to be alone and that I can incorporate other people. We've had a few other episodes where we talk about this, but yeah.
Yeah. And realizing that it can be done alongside other things.
Oh, bless you.
Yep. And other sneezes. And I think we've both found ways to adapt to having our kids alongside us. And perhaps as they've grown, we haven't felt like we've needed as much alone time and that sort of thing. Or we're perhaps in a more of a space where we're able to recognize, oh, yes, actually, I have had some self-care moments today. Instead of getting to that end of the day and thinking, I haven't had anything at all.
And potentially also could be stemmed from our own understanding of what self-care means to us individually. And, how we've talked about that before, and that, it doesn't come down to the physical things we might be able to do, but more how is it really giving us energy back or filling our cup internally and emotionally, mentally, those kinds of things where we probably don't have to be alone, or it doesn't have to be too long in length to get it done, or maybe it does need to be alone or in, a whole day's getaway kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And those small wins help, I think, balance it out quite a lot as well. So that we don't feel like we need to be quite so extreme, because I think anything in extremes can become quite unhealthy. If we were feeling like we needed self-care 24/7, we still have children who are standing on the outside of the door right now trying to say something, and I can't quite work out what he's trying to say because I'm trying to listen to you at the same time. But I think it's important to realize that there does need to be that balance, and there can be so much enjoyment that we can take from just small moments in the day, and picking flowers with children, or patting your pet, or so many different things that we do, which can fill our cup in a way now, which perhaps it didn't in the past, for me anyway. What about for you?
Yeah. I think so. Let me back into it this way. You grabbed for our notes, you grabbed a definition from the internet. A part of it is self-care is about replenishing your resources without depleting someone else's. And I like how it's brought in a second party in the definition of this, where it's not just us that we're replenishing, but the intention is to not take from someone else to replenish us. And I think when we do that, that's where it becomes unhealthy. So like if we are not going to be doing self-care alone, so if I'm doing it with my son, like I can't be taking what he could be getting from what we do together, where he's not getting replenished resources also. So like, I think if I'm taking that from him, that's where it becomes unhealthy. If I'm taking the opportunity away from my husband and making him more depleted because I need it, but has he gotten his replenishment yet? And it's that give and take of being able to it's like, are we then responsible for everyone else's self-care levels and knowing that when we go do our own self-care?
Yeah, that's a huge pressure, which I've been under the spell of, if you like. I wanted to touch on something that you were talking about then as well, about replenishing our resources instead of depleting someone else's. I think when we replenish ours, the people around us, because they're within our proximity and because they're experiencing perhaps some of the self-care with us, or they're just generally feeling into our energy from that, I think they can also become replenished from our replenishment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that goes along with you got to fill your own cup before you can fill someone else's cup.
Sure.
And there's the idea of the more you fill your cup, you start to overflow it. And is that what everyone else is getting? Is that overflow? And if we're so far depleted from our resources, it's going to take a lot longer to be able to do that. So
that's right.
That might need to be where we're watching ourselves. Is self-care may not be unhealthy, but it might be unhealthy that we don't have those ways to replenish ourselves so that others can benefit from that overflow that comes out of us when we are filled.
Yeah. I want to take it one step further as well. When we are overflowing and someone's just in a real funk, for whatever reason, they're just quite down, and perhaps they've had a stressful day at work that we don't know about yet, or perhaps they've got something else going on where they just can't shift. I think it's important for us to recognize that if we're overflowing, we cannot expect or judge the reactions from other people if they are not perhaps what we think or different to how we're feeling at the time. Does that make sense?
So is it like if we're feeling so great and someone comes into our area, we'll call it, like my spouse comes home and he's just not having it, I can't expect him to all of a sudden feel better because he's now in my presence where I'm like just emulating happiness, like take it from me. Or it might be a little bit more work and I might need to actually give him the space to actually go do some self-care himself. He just can't get it from me.
That's right. Yes. No. Yeah. And I think sometimes there are situations in the past where I may have thought that the reactions would be different, or may have felt a bit down when someone comes in with a really low mood and I'm really high because there's an obvious friction or resistance there. And I think then there's a hesitation perhaps to, depending on what other stuff you've got working on your own stuff, we talked about that fairly recently. I think, we just need to remember that where we're at is not where everybody else is going to be. Yeah.
Only some things are contagious when everything is good.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, yeah. And there's not really any crystal ball in a lot of those situations either.
No, I think we even have talked about it a few times, but it's come up quite a bit. The being self-aware and accepting of like the state that you're in, that you might have an energy leak, that you are needing to get some self-care, but like seeing that in other people too. The more we practice seeing it in ourselves, just that help us seeing it in other people. So like, I know the days that Declan is really needing some extra cuddles or something, but how do I now incorporate that into self-care for both of us by being aware of it? Is it that I need to have self-care for myself first before we do something together? So that way, like we're talking about, that I replenish myself to have that overflow that he can grab from. He might be a little bit more receptive than an adult, where they might be a little bit more blocked off that need to go do their own thing, or does he need to be involved in an activity with me that's going to replenish him as well at that same time?
Yep. Interesting point. And good, I think good reflection as well to think about, because there is still, I think, that stigma out there that self-care does need to be alone, and it needs to be something separated from your children at times to feel like you're getting a break or getting a chance to replenish. And so when that feels or actually is impossible, maybe due to all sorts of reasons. Maybe we're a single parent, maybe we're working from home with children, maybe we don't have access to extended family within our immediate space, maybe they're far away, or those sort of things. So there's lots of different situations out there. And yeah, when we're told that self-care needs to be alone, in many cases, I think we're here to debunk some of those self-care ideas as well.
We can quickly feel defeated when we are putting that standard on ourselves that it has to be more than 5 minutes. It has to be alone. It has to be on this list that somebody posted that is the best self-care. It has to make you feel a certain way. Like there's all these things that we can just feel so challenged by that we end up not doing it because we, like you said, we don't have someone to help us be able to do it alone or help us be able to do it for a certain amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
speaking of lists as well though, Jill, like we do actually have a list that we did put together. So
we really, I mean, we were challenged with that also when coming up with the list. We put on this list, all these, I'm not going to say they're outrageous because they're not. They're things that we've learned along the way. And we were challenged with the fact to go back to our beginnings and what would have worked when we were both at our lowest and completely empty and defeated and feeling challenged with self-care. And I think going back to think about that even it's jogged some things in my mind as to the things that we can do together, Declan and I, or even Bobby and I, and like really getting back to what self-care is, the simplest form of it.
Yeah, that's right. But also approaching it in a gentle way that's not necessarily preachy or perhaps similar to some of the other stuff out there. Mainstream stuff, social stuff, like where do you draw the line? But at the same time, we really did want to have something which we could refer to because, we're 57 episodes in now. And within those 57 episodes, we've also been living our lives and had this very much on our mind, I think, more than we may have if we had not done over a year of podcasting in this space, because even you were talking about the other day how you've changed some of your language with your husband now so that he starts to call it his self-care night or day or date or that sort of thing. So there is a little bit of oomph in our in what we wanted to share in a way too. So it does help us to be able to share that beyond just this podcast. So
I think there are small wins that we can benefit greatly from.
Yep, that's right. So we're going to pop into the show notes, I believe, the email address.
Yeah.
So, locked up my self-care podcast at gmail.com. Yep.
Yeah.
It's a mouthful.
And well, I guess from that list, we also wanted to say out loud, especially if you are looking to do some self-care, not alone. One little thing that we thought might be good is spending some time with your pet. And I know I used to do that before I had Declan, because that's why I got my pets, because I didn't want to be alone in my house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something easy.
Mm-hmm. They definitely give us a lot of love back. And then I think also watching the kids watch me, or that sort of thing, interact with the pets as well. So our dog's called Belle, and our little ones just started saying Belle, 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 Belle. So yeah, it's very, very sweet.
And if you don't have a pet, you might know someone who does have a pet.
Indeed.
You can borrow and get some cuddles or something. Or even go to a shelter and go spend some time with an animal someplace. So sometimes
you can
that's all we
often
need.
find animals just out in your own backyard as well.
Yeah, even just watching them. Like, it's always fun to watch the squirrels chase each other in the trees or something. Like,
yeah, or even the ants. Have you watched ants before for a while? Outside, not inside. It can be lots of fun. I never forget, actually, my second eldest boy trying to pick up an ant when he was tiny. He was trying to chase this ant around the concrete and trying to pick it up. This tiny little ant. So sweet. On that note, I believe.
Yeah, let's close her up. So until next week.
We hope you can unstuck your muck. Bye.
Bye.